Time to get started. Welcome to our Thursday edition of the senior thesis presentations. We have, I guess we're maybe we're halfway done already, so it's really nice. You've had a lot of nice presentations. We're going to have some more nice presentations today. And we're going to start with Yumin. I think I'm supposed to say something funny about Yumin, and all I can think about is that gigantic tablet you have in the back. Yeah. Because, sometimes the students bring in tablets that look just like their school tablet, and Yumin's got the biggest tablet I've ever seen. I guess that's not really funny, is it? Sorry. Okay, but she has a very interesting topic on psychopathic traits. Super interesting, and it's something really worth thinking about. And I think it applies as much in America probably as anywhere else, because America has, the school shooting things and all of that. But anyway, it's a very interesting topic. Yumin wants to say this. She says, "I would like to thank Miss Viola, my advisor, who always helped me, and also tried to break my defense, which broadened my knowledge for my topic. Even more, I'd like to thank my friends who helped me to learn new approaches about my topic, and lastly, my parents, who helped me to discuss the topic." Yumin's title is From Traits to Tragedy: How Early Guidance and Addressing Psychopathic Traits in Children Prevents Crime. Let me get the timer ready, and I'll tell you when you can start. All right, you can start when ready.
17 men drugged, strangled, and torn apart by one man called Jeffrey Dahmer, a quiet, awkward boy who grew into a brutal killer. Each victim turned nothing into more than flesh, bones, and trophies. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't just kill people, but he destroyed them. He stored the body parts in his fridge like food and ate them. Not just because he was hungry, but he wanted to own them with him forever. Going back to his early years at the age of 12, Jeffrey Dahmer was isolated by his friends, fascinated by dead animals, and showed no empathy. In schools, the teachers noticed his unique behavior, but no one intervened. The parents, who are caught in their own conflicts, ignored the early warning signs. As a result, at the age of 14, he was begun fantasizing about murder. And just 4 years later, at the age of 18, he committed his first murder. Instead of receiving help, he was left to spiral. This is warning to all responsible adults that psychopathic traits show early. If we ignore the early warning signs, we will create another Jeffrey Dahmer. Will we continue to turn a blind eye and allow such individuals to grow more and more into our society? Long ago, the word psychopathy came from a term called suffering soul. Early doctors used this term to describe a person who looked empty inside or didn't know right or wrong. Later, this inspired many doctors. And later on, the public also favored the word sociopathy more than psychopathy, as psychopathy looked too complex for them. As a result, around the mid-20th century, new books began to come out to change their perspectives. Because of this, medical guidelines started to put psychopathy in a more broader level, which was sociopathic personality disturbance. And later on, the early doctors started to make checklists to further describe this kind of traits. Psychopathy is a personality disorder defined at the age of 18, shown through shallow emotions, lack of guilt, manipulation, and superficial charm. Psychopathy is as 5 times as more likely to commit crime and at least 2 times more likely to commit severe violent actions. However, we should always note that psychopathy and sociopathy and psychosis is actually different, as psychopathy doesn't experience hallucinations or they don't lose touch with reality, and they lack genuine attachments. I've also want to emphasize that even though children exhibit psychopathic traits, they should never be labeled as psychopath as their personality is still developing. However, we should call them as having callous unemotional traits, which are early warning signs of cold and uncaring behavior. This behavior includes not caring about others' feelings or don't feel any guilt when they do something right or wrong. And moreover, they are being unusually fearless or calm. However, we should always note that even though psychopathic traits in children can be emerged, they're not always growing up as psychopathy. To truly reduce crime, we must tackle its roots first by addressing psychopathic traits in children early. With that, I urge schools and parents to address psychopathic traits in early by supporting and guiding parents and schools to truly reduce crime for three main reasons. First, with many psychological, social, and neurological factors, psychopathy and crime are interdependent. And second, if we don't address psychopathic traits early, it will have profound impact not only just to themselves, but also to others and society as a whole. And lastly, there are positive interventions that modify psychopathic traits with support and guidance from parents and schools. To start, we should always note that psychopathy are more likely to commit crimes compared to non-psychopathic individuals. Research reveals that although only 1% of the general population is psychopaths, they make up around 20% of prison population. This is just not a coincidence. Their findings highlight psychopathy as a significant risk factor for criminal behavior. If we really want to understand and prevent crime, this is definitely something we must pay attention to. Aside from this, one of the biggest differences lies in their brain structure. Imagine the typical brain as a well-organized control center, where emotional alarms go well when we feel guilt, fear, or empathy. In a psychopathic brain, many of these alarms are either broken, weakened, or damaged. Take the amygdala part of the brain, for example. This part of the brain works like a smoke detector for emotions. When something dangerous or upsetting happens, this amygdala reacts quickly. But in psychopaths, this emotional smoke detector is smaller and much less active. So when others might feel fear or guilt, they almost feel nothing. Then there's the paralimbic system, which acts like a bridge between emotions and decision-making. In a healthy brain, it helps us learn from mistakes and connect our emotions and choices. On the other hand, psychopathic brain, this bridge is damaged, like trying to send a message through a broken telephone line. In short, while a typical brain reacts emotionally and morally to guide behavior, the psychopathic brain runs with missing system. This explains why psychopaths often repeat harmful actions, show little remorse, and more likely to commit serious crimes. According to psychopathy checklists, those with high scores of psychopathic behavior often ignore rules and consequences, making traditional punishment less effective. Due to these distinct factors emerging in psychopaths, individuals with psychopathic traits are more likely to recidivate. Research shows that many offenders return for crimes driven by their personal gain, such as drug trafficking or financial offenses. Even more, people with psychopathic traits often have trouble controlling their emotions, like empathy, and resist rehabilitations. Studies also revealed that psychopaths never felt guilty when making immoral decisions, which contributes to their repeated criminal behavior. However, this pattern isn't just limited to adults. Children displaying callous unemotional traits reoffend at similarly high rates, showing that these traits can persist into adulthood. Given the clear link between psychopathy and criminal behavior, early intervention is crucial. Children with psychopathic tendencies often struggle with emotional control, empathy, and guilt, leading to repeated rule breaking and resistance to punishment. Without proper support, this antisocial personality can continue contributing to 30% to 40% of violent crimes committed by individuals with psychopathic traits. Building on that, unaddressed psychopathic traits can deeply affect individuals and the people around them and society economically. High impulsivity and aggression in psychopathy can lead to social isolation and strained relationships. In extreme cases, their violence may target themselves and others. Psychopathy often experiences a deep sense of loneliness, which can lead to aggression, emotional disconnection, and even self-destructive behavior. These tend to damage relationships, making it harder for them to connect with others. As a result, they become increasingly isolated, and this isolation can make negative view of the world and the people around them. Moving on, emotional manipulation from psychopathy can deeply affect their close relationships, causing psychological harm, giving mental health stress, and isolating them socially, which worsens these people's conditions. Imagine you walk into a quiet house, but something feels different. The air is tense, and in the living room, the parent raises their voice out of control. Rules are strict, and love is hard to find. There are no warm hugs after making mistake, no small talks about life problems. Only commands, punishments, and silence. The child in this house learns to hide their feelings. If they cry, they will get scolded, and if they make mistake, then they will get punishment without knowing the reason. Over time, they stop showing emotions. They might stop feeling bad when they do something wrong. They might even lie to get what they want, because that's what works in their world. Studies show that many children who develop psychopathic traits grow up in homes like this. These homes often have poor parenting, lots of fighting, and little emotional care. And it doesn't just hurt the child, but it also hurts the entire family. Furthermore, in terms of society as a whole, psychopathy increases costs for criminal justice system, healthcare, social services, and lower worker productivity. It makes society's economy less stable. In 2019, it was estimated that this cost total about $1.6 trillion. And this is $1,600,000. If you spend $1 million every single day, it will take you over 4,000 years to spend it all, and this is how big number is. This can mess up both social and work life, causing real economic and social problems. That's why early intervention, whether from parents or schools, it's so important. Lastly, although there are many unapproachable facts and information about psychopathic traits, this behavior can be modified through positive intervention by providing guidance to parents and schools. Psychopathy doesn't guarantee evil, but ignorance makes it grow. It's not unchangeable, but without intervention, it remains unchanged. Through research and experiments, some therapy and programs are promising enough to change their skills and actions positively. Most of us think the word psychopathy sounds scary. It makes us think of danger, crime, and people who can't change. However, imagine what if this view was wrong. And imagine what could happen if we step early. If schools were trained to spot the signs, if parents were given tools, not just punishments, and to guide their children. We are not just talking about stopping the crime. We are talking about giving someone a chance at real life. A chance to feel love, a chance to feel guilt, and to care. So in the end, the real question is not about can they change? The real question is, are we willing to make them change? However, some may question, why is it only specific for parents and schools? Why don't we just let the professionals to guide them? The answer is simple. parents and schools are the first and most consistent influences in child's life. As the saying goes, the roots determine the fruit. A child's emotional and social development starts at home and continues in the classroom. That's why the role of parenting and schooling is so important. When children grow up in a home filled with care and go to a school where they feel safe and supported, their chances of developing healthy emotional social development increases. Positive parenting, along with school programs like social and emotional learning, helps reduce antisocial behavior by teaching kids empathy, emotional control, and how to build healthy relationships. In the end, positive reinforcement from parents and teachers plays a powerful role in a child's long-term growth. It helps kids build strong social skills, succeed academically, and grow emotionally. Over time, this creates a solid foundation for positive behavior and lowers the risk of developing antisocial traits. According to operant conditioning theory, positive intervention like praising or rewarding good behavior supports kids to repeat those actions. When used consistently over time, this method can shape the behavior in a positive way with benefits that carry into adolescence and even adulthood. With early intervention and support are often seen as effective ways to reduce psychopathic traits, some argue that these traits are deeply rooted and it's unlikely to change. People might think that not all individuals with psychopathic traits commit crimes, and even these certain traits, which are superficial charm, are actually useful in business fields and politics. Imagine a person who is charming, fearless, and strategic. These traits might lead them to succeed. You might be attracted to them and view them with no caution. However, did you notice that these traits have big potential to be paired with lack of empathy, impulsivity, and manipulativeness? This is the reality of psychopathy. Even if some individuals never commit crimes, the potential risk for harm remains dangerously high and often hidden beneath polished surface. People often claim these children can't be helped, can't be changed, can't be taught, that their psychopathic traits are fixed and unchangeable, especially with their brain structure. But imagine if that belief was wrong. Research shows that developing brains is actually malleable and it can be changed early. With targeted interventions like therapy and programs can even make deeply rooted psychopathic traits reshape, transforming aggression into empathy and isolation into connection. Reviewing what we have discussed so far, we've discussed the clear connection between psychopathy and crime through psychological, social, and neurological factors. We've also discussed the crucial role in intervention for parents and schools to address psychopathic traits in children who are at higher risk of engaging in criminal behavior. Moreover, we've also discussed the serious consequences of psychopathic traits in children if not addressed early, not only just to themselves, but also to others and society as a whole. Finally, we've discussed how these outcomes can be prevented. With early intervention, supportive program, and guidance to schools and parents can change the result. But what if we do nothing? What if we ignore the children who clearly shows the psychopathic traits? Their isolation grows, their behavior worsens, and they become more dangerous, not only just to themselves, but also to others. These are not just numbers in a report. They are real families, real consequences, and real communities. Left unaddressed, psychopathic traits are very dangerous to lives and communities. However, it doesn't have to end only in this way. With right support, care, and guidance, we can change the outcome. If we see a children struggling, we can speak up because early intervention matters. We must actively search for better mental health resources for schools and positive parenting, and also change punishments to guidance. The future depends on how we respond today, and the time to act is now. Thank you.
All right, really good job, Yumin. Our panelists today are Ms. Rireen and Ms. Stephanie. I'll let Ms. Stephanie go first.
Hello, Yumin.
Hi, Miss.
I think your paper is really good, your thesis is really good, and I really appreciate how you tackle this topic. It's not an easy topic, so I appreciate for that. And I also want to give appreciation also how you choose your counselor.
Yeah.
Because I think you're with Miss Viola, right? Miss
Yes.
Viola is an accomplished psychologist, so I think that's really nice on your part. Okay, so on to the first question. Do you think in this case of developing psychopathic traits, do you think nurture plays a bigger part compared to nature?
Okay, thank you for the question. In my opinion, I believe that the nurturing also plays a big role, but in the same way, the nature also plays a big role. As if a children born with a small amygdala and some differences in paralimbic system, these children have higher impulsivity and higher in aggression. And if this is not addressed with nurturing, with parents and schools who can influence them, this can be worsened. So I believe that these two things are actually equally same.
They're actually hand in hand.
Yeah, hand in hand.
So, do you think children who they don't initially have these psychopathic traits, but end up developing them due to the environment they grew up in? Do you think it's possible?
Yeah, it's possible actually.
Okay. So I also want to ask, because they're still children, and you also said yourself that their personality is still developing. Do you think is it scientifically valid to screen these psychopathic traits in children? Because as you said, it's still developing, right?
Can you repeat the question? I don't.
It's okay.
Sorry.
So as their personality is still developing, do you think is it scientifically valid to screen these psychopathic traits really early in their life?
Can I have a moment to think?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Oh, okay. I believe that this scientific research also plays a key role in screening these children, as without the scientific research and scientific revolution that's still happening right now with AI and even like research that's with like children's and they observe them. Without this, I think we wouldn't be able to know and define the checklist of these behaviors in these children. So I think it's also kind of valid. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your answer. And also still related to that question, do you think it's actually ethical for the parents to screen their children that early in their life? Because, again, they're still children. They still don't have this autonomy on their self, right? They don't have the independence to choose for themselves. So do you think is it ethical for parents and for adults among these children to decide for these children to be screened?
Thank you for the question. I think that these children are under the help of parents. So they are still young. That's why we need parents to guide them. The parents to know whether they are actually in a wrong path or not. And this is also the reason why not only the children should be guided, but also the parents that need some therapies and programs to have a good and right, something right parenting programs. Yeah.
That's a really nice answer. I like
Yeah.
it.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think we all have agreed with the statement that you provided is true. I also agree actually, because we as adults need to have better responsibility to guide our children. But then again, however, in the case of individuals who have grown as adults, who didn't have access to treatment early in their life, and they turn out to be criminals, how do you think we should treat them? Should we isolate them because they're a threat to society? Should we punish them heavily? What do you think?
So, thank you for the question. To clarify your question, are you talking about that? How should we tackle the issue of cost inefficiency, or
No. So for children, let's say they have psychopathic traits, but we didn't treat them early. We didn't have any intervention, and they really and they really grew up to be adults, and they did criminals, and they did crimes. And as a society, how do you think we should treat these people? Should we punish them? Should we isolate them because they are a threat to our society? What do you think?
Thank you for the question. Right now, if a person who committed crime is actually looking by the government with some bracelets in their feet, something that one, so it's actually it has a higher risk of getting prevented. And second, to address them without the government or the criminal justice system, I think the courts should give them or should support them with some free therapies or free programs that are actually supported by the government. And it's actually happening in Korea also. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think having psychopathic traits is actually similar to having disabilities in the eye of the law?
Can you repeat the question? I don't.
So do you think psychopathic traits can actually be treated as disabilities when you're being judged at court?
Oh, okay. Thank you for the question. For the psychopathy, who is after the age of 18, they are recognized as a psychopathy. But the children who are under the age of 18, they are actually called as callous unemotional traits or lack of emotional regulation, which are actually had repetitive irresponsibility or had conduct disorder from the age of 15, like repeatedly.
Okay, we need to move to Miss Rireen.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss.
Hi, Yumin.
Hi, Miss.
Well presented. Yeah, very interesting topic. Okay, and then you also memorize it well, try to present it well also. I really appreciate it. Okay. Yumin, do you watch Criminal Minds?
Sorry, I don't.
Yeah?
I don't really.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah.
Really? It has the behavioral analysis unit department, and your thesis really related to that
Okay.
department unit, the profiler,
Okay.
something like that. Right? Are you interested being profiler or something like that?
Yes, actually.
Okay. Okay, that's why you took this topic?
Yes, actually. So, since 10th grade, I was actually thinking about being a profiler and try to learn about the crimes and how this is actually related with the psychology of this person and how it's related with their behavior. And also, I think I don't really see the criminal mind in US, but I also see the Korean programs that are actually related with these criminal things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's say I have a question. Let's say, imagine that I am early childhood teacher at CBCS, right? How could I distinguish between I met these children, 3 years, 4 years old children, and how could I distinguish between emotional immature, the normal one, with the tendency of that callous unemotional for the early age?
Thank you for the question. Through my research, I have found out that this can be differentiated through patterns and duration and doing again and again even though it's taught already. So for example, these children has a repetitive irresponsibility or like lying or like some kind of aggression a little bit. And if you already told the children that actually this is wrong and you should behave in this way when you are in this kind of situation, first, you're already taught. And second, they are already doing it again. Third, they're doing it again. And fourth, doing it again. This means that they are actually at higher risk of having callous and emotional traits.
For the early age, yeah, 3 and 4,
Yeah,
like
also.
it will be seen obviously
Yeah.
for the teachers and also maybe the parents, right? And let's say, for example, I were the head of school of Cahaya Bangsa, right? What should I do to help my teachers and also parents so they're also aware of this tendency?
Can I have a moment to think first? Okay, thank you for the question. So, if I say in a Christian perspective, who goes to CBCS school, one of our value is wisdom and truth. And through this, actually, we can apply the multisystemic therapy, which is a therapy that is used by the whole community around these children, which is family, peers, and schools and teachers. And I think related with the school's Christian perspective, we can make the like discipleship support teams. For example, like at homes, they are checked by parents like maybe once a week, like let's discuss what you have learned this day and how can we relate it with the biblical scripture. And like for teachers, they can have like their teacher's notes on how they react. This, yeah.
Is there any specific program that we can attend probably to equip ourselves with this knowledge, at least basic knowledge?
Thank you for the question. Right now, there is the social and emotional learning program. It's actually very widely used in countries, even in Indonesia. I have some research that in Jakarta, the name is Sekolah Cikal. They learn empathy and like collaboration and emotional regulation through this program. So this program is actually learning about how emotional intelligence works and even like identify facial expressions so that they can learn emotions through understanding it as they have lack of emotion regulation. Yeah.
The cell program,
Yeah.
right? Very good, you mean, very good. You did the research already.
Yeah.
Okay, and then about this, yeah, Mr. Wade said earlier that in the States, probably people more aware about this because it happens there often, like students bring guns and then massacres somewhere, for example, right? So they're aware of this. But how about the cultural perception? That's probably different, right? And then how do cultural perception of morality and empathy influence how psychopathic traits are identified and treated across different societies?
Thank you for the question. For this question, I have discussed with friends, and I don't really come up with a fixed answer or any like some right answer. But I believe that as cultural differences is wide, like Indonesia, like suku Batak, suku Jawa, something like that. Each of them have different values and traditions and maybe perception against these traits. So maybe for some of the cultures, they look a little bit of aggression or a little bit of charming as like a masculine thing. And on the other hand, other cultures may feel that this can be aggressive because, if I'm not mistaken, there's a suku that is prioritizing women over men. So this is actually subjective. I believe that it's kind of subjective. Yeah.
So it could be probably interpreted differently.
Yeah,
Different
yeah.
society. Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Yumin.
Miss.
Good job, Yumin. I have a few questions for you, some that come from your peers. But let me start out with this, is that if I'm a teacher here, and I've got a student, we'll call him Little Edward, right? And he's showing these traits, right? Think about it. As a teacher, I want to address this, but I've got to talk to the parents. Now, how am I going to tell the parents that I'm afraid little Edward's a psychopath, right? How do I do that? And how do I do it in a way that really encourages them to get help?
Okay, thank you for the question. I believe that many parents will be actually very worried about the labeling, stigma, and denial from the society and friends, that's why they're actually hesitating on having some programs and treatments. But I believe that with language caution, with little Edward, by using language caution, such as not mentioning about psychopathic traits, but use other words such as what I've mentioned, callous unemotional traits or lack of emotional regulation. Using this kind of languages or words that are actually not really in a high risk of getting stigmatized, we can actually convince the parents to make them in treatments, I believe, yeah.
Okay, good answer. And would you say that, I know you've been focusing on parents and teachers, but what about just friends of the family? Like, I was telling Miss Rereen about an experience. I thought, wow, this child seems to have some of those traits. I'm really worried about him. But if I tell the parents, then the parents are not going to like me. We'll have some sort of a fallout between families. What about that, family, friends? Should they stay away from it or not?
Oh, thank you for the question. So I believe that I know that friends might be kind of scared or maybe like in a cautious way to act in front of that child who like shows some callous unemotional traits. However, I believe that by opening up the mental illness more openly, I think conversation and have conversation with friends and also these children, like one by one, rationally, not in emotional way. This can help shape this children perception about this child, and this child the perception of children, and they can understand each other. And second, the families who are surrounding them can actually help them not to act in a different way. So, for example, if you find this child clearly showing psychopathic traits, and in a like family meeting, like for example, like Chinese New Year, and you act so differently in front of them and like isolating them, go away, or like you don't even understand what I'm saying because you're lacking empathy. I don't think we should act in this way, but we should treat them in equal way. Yeah.
Okay, good. And so are you suggesting then that maybe at schools that schools should try to intervene even without the parents' consent, or should the school always reach out to the parents first in order to put a child through some sort of therapy or program like this?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think it depends. For example, as I have mentioned before, some parents are actually the reason why the children develop psychopathic traits, with like the house that are with fear or loud voices and aggression. in that way, we should have therapies, counselors, teachers, or even governmental help to save them from the family. However, if the parents clearly shows that they are actually not having any causes of these children having psychopathic traits or lacking empathy or aggression, then we must say this to parents.
Okay. Well, time is over. Good job, Yumin.
Thank you.
She did a great job. What we'll do is we'll meet family and friends and panelists and advisors over here for photos, and then we have kind of a long break, so we'll start again
Thank you,
with,
Miss.
I think, Keisha at 10:10, right? All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.